Welcome to Brilliant Podcast, where we interview amazing authors and we talk about their books and the inspiration and what we can learn from it. Today we've got Steph Wagner, and I want to make sure that you pick this one up. It's called Fly, A Woman's Guide to Financial Freedom and Building a Life You Love. Now, it has the word woman in there, but don't be fooled. This book is amazing. I was reading it and I was like, wait, this this is different. Like
Oh,
it starts off like a story. I mean, unfortunately, you had to go through the pain, right?
right.
Starts off like a story, but then it goes into wait, let me teach you what I learned along the way. And it's crucial to living a better life. So great job. Great job.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I took a bit of a risk with this one because, to your point, it's not your average personal finance book. In fact, I really like to think of it as an empowerment book disguised as a finance book, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
And I don't think we're talking enough out there, men and women. And thank you for clarifying that, because yes, although it's written for women, it is for everyone. I have three boys, and I think there are very valuable lessons, life lessons, and then financial lessons. But I don't think we talk enough about the intersection between our financial stability, our financial freedom, and our financial autonomy, and what that does to open up the possibilities for the rest of our lives. If we're worried about how our bills are paid, or, do we know this stuff? Are we doing it right? Do we have the right people to help us? If we're staying up at night worrying about that, we certainly aren't taking the time to dream big, think about the possibilities, and really think about the life we want to live that's more truer to who we really are.
You bring up a good point. I mean, how do you deal with that when you're going through a generation that feels like they maybe have been taken advantage of, right? And now you have an economy that is very mixed, and you're watching the effects of unaffordability, right? And you're watching the effects of student loans, higher debt, and it's hit millennials pretty hard, but you've seen some also succeed. But I think a bigger chunk of them are having a challenge. Where do you start with them?
Yeah, it all starts to me with mindset. As you talked about, I went through some pretty tough times, right? It wasn't necessarily financial. It was incredible. It was financial, but it was more than anything else emotional, right? And and I think everyone has a story. Everybody, I mean, my hope is that everyone will see a little piece of themselves inside my journey, but certainly their journeys are very different. But it's really easy to slip into that scarcity mindset, to slip into a victim mindset, to slip into why me, why me, instead of seeing that, okay, with every challenge, whether it's a life event challenge like I faced, or even a realization of, I think my life experience as I was older helped me really heal from my life experience as a child, which I had never dealt with. I compartmentalized it in so many ways and thought I was stronger and bigger than, you know, I grew up with a lot of domestic violence, and I just shoved that away and pretended it didn't exist. And it wasn't until life happened that I really had to deal with it all. Right. And I think my advice to that generation, or frankly, anyone that is in this woe me, which is again, understandable. I understand, like, it's hard when you're in the moment, right? But there is a moment where you also have a choice. I'm going to let my circumstance or the circumstances around me keep me in this mindset, or I'm going to use them to maybe think a little differently, right?
Take take us through your lowest point so we can
Oh,
see, because the challenge that a lot of people have is like, well, you've never gone through what I have, or they start throwing that, or they start thinking it, right? So
yeah.
take us, take it. This is why I loved your book. It felt like a
Oh.
story, and I was like, oh shit, it's getting worse. And right?
But then it gets
And it gets
better.
better. Okay, that's why I loved it. And then you show like all the tables, and you're like, "This is what you should do." So I was like, "Oh, I was drawn to all of it." But take us through the lowest point so
Yeah.
people understand what you mean by mindset and the shift.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I'll give a little bit of the book away because I have to, right? A big low point, obviously, was when I found out that my life was a lie. That, obviously there's a lot of story that led up to it that we're not getting into, but I kind of thought I had this perfect life. I kind of thought that, wow, I've done everything right, so to speak. I had the great job, I had the great, amazing, fell in love, had the amazing, partner, got on the fast track of really doing well as a unit with our family, and here we are, suddenly raising 3 kids. I did leave my career. That's a hurdle. um, but this book is not about, should I have left my career or not? But there was a risk I put myself in that I didn't know, that I didn't realize, that I didn't think about. And ultimately I leaned out of all aspects of my financial life, which was the beginning of the train wreck, to be honest with you. It was the beginning of the first point of the lowest point, but it wasn't the lowest point. And that was when I realized, fast forward, that the life I thought I had, I didn't. That it was really a lie for about 2.5 years. And that my husband was in love with someone else, and was leaving us. And it was an aha moment of not only the emotional devastation of losing that, because I thought he was my partner forever, right? And that was a blind side. But that, listen, that happens in life, right? That's not what's so unique. What was unique is the realization that I had put myself in tremendous risk by ultimately becoming incredibly dependent on this man. And I really saw us as a unit, which so many people should, right? Where we enter into a partnership, that's the way it is. But life can happen. It doesn't have to be divorce. It could be anything. It could be a failure of a business. It could be a medical crisis. It could be death. And and I wasn't prepared, right? And I was like, "Oh my God, I am smart. How did I let this happen to me?" And there was so much shame around, what had I done? And I lived this could never happen to me mentality. But the real lowest point, I think, I fought really hard for about 15 months to save this. And I think the lowest point for me was the realization that I wasn't saving this because it was truly, I loved him. You know, I wasn't trying to save this because, yes, I felt terrible for my children. And that's my role as their mother, to do what's best for them. But it was an aha moment that I was fighting to save this because I was afraid. I was afraid to step into the unknown. I was afraid to rely on myself. I was afraid to fail, and that, I think, was the lowest point, because I had to really sit with myself and do a lot of work to get truer to who I am today. But if but that took a mindset, and that's kind of bringing it back to your first question is, I had a choice. I could have become a victim of my circumstance. And, I think I will tell you, literally, I remember the fork in the road. I was sitting on a bench, or a tree swing, drinking way too much wine. Um, and I sat there going, Steph, like, I saw the fork. You're going to follow down this path and become a victim of circumstance and get on a really unhealthy lifestyle, like where you're just masking and hiding, or you can do the real work and you can turn this into something positive. And I had 3 little boys staring at me and I had no choice.
Yeah. I think that's powerful because a lot of us go through this, whether it's talking to ourselves the way you did or coming to the realization when we're hitting rock bottom or there already, And then we have this conversation with ourselves, and it sounds like, listen, there's going to be a lot of work. You have no choice. And you just have to get to that next step. This is what you need to do. Stop what you're doing. Now let's make it happen. How do we do that without having to be towards the bottom or at a bottom?
You don't. You really, I mean, and I think when you obviously we're talking about major life experiences, right? And major pivots, but you talk to any entrepreneur today, right? And they will tell you their lowest points, their failures were massive turning points where opportunities and frankly the road they were meant to be on happened. Very few will pick a path and ultimately that path will lead to where they are today, right? Like life is nothing but twists and turns. It's what we do with those twists and turns that I think tell us a lot about who we are to ourselves. And that's number one, right? We have to live for ourselves. We can't live for other people. But when we begin to see and know who we are, we do become better people. We become better partners. We become better, parents. We become better friends. We become better, children. But we have to do the work and love ourselves and know who we are before any of that can happen. And I think too often we rush to the solution instead of sitting in what I like to call the muck. Um, and it's like, and I think that's through any transition because change is hard, you know, change is tough. It doesn't matter. But there is tremendous opportunity if you with the right mindset. And obviously, a lot of that is, the fundamentals are a growth mindset versus a scarcity mindset. And it's easy for us to slip in and out. I had a growth mindset my whole life. I would never have survived my father had I not. I was an only child living in a cocoon in so many ways, like this imaginary cocoon. I felt bulletproof. A lot. I was an athlete. That helped. I felt strong physically. Um, and so that played into this emotional strength and confidence that I could conquer as a little girl this abusive father and what I was witnessing between him and my mother. But it wasn't, like I said, I didn't really do the work until I failed in my own life and said, Steph, though that strength that got you through all of that, that's not going to help you here. You got to refine who you are. Um, so I'm very grateful. I mean, I think people often ask me, do you have regrets? No, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in regrets. If you believe in a regret, you rob yourself of the lessons, the experiences that are so valuable that frankly you can pay forward. And that's what I ultimately tried to do with this book.
Yeah, I definitely see that. In this transformation that you're talking about, was there anything or is there anything that in your life hasn't been as easy to change that you've struggled with? And maybe it has now, but it wasn't as easy.
Mm, you mean just in terms of my own inner qualities that still create roadblocks from time to
Yeah,
time?
you got it.
Yeah, for sure. Because you can do a ton of work, and we have to do work, and life is constantly changing. We have to keep doing the work. We're never there, right?
Yeah.
Um, I learned patience from this process. I
Oh,
learned I wasn't really patient. I'm still not completely patient, so that's something I'm continuing to work at. But I think and remind myself to live in the moment.
mm,
And that's not always easy because as an overachiever, right, where we think we can manifest or can kind of control outcomes,
yeah.
we can't. And the only thing in life is change. And you have to be in the moment and be willing to be dynamic enough, dynamic meaning open to change and pivoting constantly. And that will always be hard because at the end of the day, I'm a fixer and I'm tenacious. So sometimes you just need to let go and
All
let
right.
let the process unveil.
That makes sense. So then take me through. You're on the way. back up, right, from the bottom. You're figuring this out. You quickly realize that you're in debt, right? You were talking about debt. And now you're trying to figure out how to put a lid on this or at least get it straightened out.
Yeah.
For the people that are listening in and they're at a type of bottom financially, where would they start? Is it an understanding of what finances are? Because one thing was super clear. I wrote it down here. It's like money is extremely emotional. It deals with like all of your emotions.
Yep.
I
Absolutely.
clearly saw that in your book. I was like, man,
Yeah. Through
where do we
every
start?
step of the way. Yep. Through every aspect of it. You are so spot on. I love this question because just as I had my darkest moment emotionally and had to change course and figure out, what I was going to do at this pivotal moment, there was a financial moment for that too, right? And that really became when suddenly I'm at the helm of everything all by myself. The divorce was finalized. I was solely responsible for the most part for these kids. I had absolutely no income. Despite being an investment banker and a private equity vice president, all these years ago, you're gonna laugh. But let me just tell you, when I was in PE way back then, we had phone, FedEx, and fax. We didn't have email. So my career was pretty outdated. Maybe we had email, but I certainly never used it. Um, so it didn't matter, right? What my very stale, very dusty, cobwebby resume had on it. The prospect for income was next to nothing, right? Or even going back, I'd have to completely start over and emotionally at a time where I had no self worth. So starting over and getting an entry level job after being a vice president, as a private equity fund would have just added to that just sad and lack of self worth. So I had to look at what I could control. And that's my advice to anyone that is really sitting there in that place of muck and trying to get out and push through the uncomfortable is where lean on what you're strong at. What can you focus on that you can control versus the thing that likely you want to focus on because it's what's keeping you up at night and it's what you can't control. And so for me, interestingly enough, like I was a mess emotionally, but financially, I had skills given my background. I had skills given, they were rusty. I hadn't used them because I let my husband handle all of this stuff. But I was like, wait, Steph, if you can't control the income and you can't control your emotions right now because you're quite frankly a disaster, focus on what you can. And I really sat there to your point first and said, let me first think about why. Why did I abdicate? Why did I get into this situation? Why did I become dependent on somebody when I'm good at this stuff? When I loved finance, when I have a degree in finance, when I, was at the top, like I was starting an unbelievable career in finance. Why did I think he could do it better than me? Why did I give it up?
He couldn't. Just so you know, for the
And he
book, he
did it.
couldn't. Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
funny.
truth be told, I didn't know it, but when
Yeah.
after the divorce, I was like, wow, he didn't do that good of a job anyways. But this isn't about him. This is about personal responsibility. And I did it, right? But why? And to your point, that was centered around my emotions around money. I watched money be a source of conflict in my family growing up. I watch it be used as control. I'm being held, despite the fact that my mom earned, and some years out earned my dad. He controlled everything. There was a lot of yelling around it. Frankly, as life began, we started to have a family. I didn't want conflict in my family like that. I was like, you know what? It's better
Mm.
he deal with it than I deal with it because I don't want to fight about it. I don't want to deal with it. It's easier for me to bury my head in the sand.
That's like, hold on. That's most of the world.
It
That
is.
right there.
It is. With money and too often with a lot of aspects of life, right, that are hard, right? That we want to avoid instead of me recognizing in the moment, why am I so willing to turn this over? And then having conversations about it with myself and obviously with my spouse at the time. I didn't. I waited 14 years after that decision till I had no choice. And it was an oh crap moment. But I don't think, and I'm glad you brought it up, I don't think we really dive into the emotional part of money. We don't really, beyond the abdication, like, why are our behaviors the way they are? Mine happened to be that, but why do people overspend? Why does retail therapy exist, right? Why are some people penny pinchers? Why are they, despite how much money they have, they save every penny? There's a reason behind that. And some good, some bad. There's with I call them money personalities, and within each money personality, there's positive strength, there's strengths that are positive, and there's also weaknesses. But until we sit in it and have conversations with ourselves about it, we don't sit there and say, okay, but what doesn't work for me anymore? What do I need to purge? And clearly, avoidance wasn't going to work for me anymore. Right. I mean, I had to get in the game. But I also recognize something, that whenever we had a major purchase, I had no problem with us as a household spending money. Like, if, he'd want to go do this or I'd want to go do this, and I couldn't be the one to pay for it. He would have to pay a big check. He would have to, anything more than $200 stress me out to see it going out my account or going out the door. And I thought about that too. Like, why am I so paralyzed by this? If you're really going to take charge of it, you got to understand what that was about too. And a lot of it, again, was I was raised where we looked like we had a lot of money. I was raised in a household where my dad drove, fancy cars. My mom drove a fancy car. We belonged to a country club. We were broke. I didn't know it until the day, and I mentioned this in the book. My dad actually got a hole in one at a golf tournament, go figure, and won a car. And he had to sell that car to pay our taxes. So, what would have happened if he didn't win a car? And that was an aha moment of, oh my God, despite what it looks like, we're broke. So, despite what reality might be, I could always be one step away from financial devastation, which is why I didn't like to spend money. It triggered anxiety. But again, you got to unpack it. You got to have an honest conversation with why. Why do you have these behaviors? So it's complex, but then I thought, well, that's stupid. Like, come on, Steph. Like, you can't. You got to flip the narrative around this, but that can't happen if you don't take the time to think about it.
Well, I think you flip the narrative for us as the reader. Well,
Thank you.
at least you start to for me when I was reading your book, where you broke it out. I'm gonna just not show it, but read it. 45, 20,
Mhm.
35 model, right? I think that you started to change my narrative, right? So my background's in history. I'm a history major. That's right. And I'm a real estate agent. And traditionally, real estate agents aren't the greatest with money, right? We make
But
great commissions.
I was just going to say, but you can earn certainly a lot. It's what you
You can.
do with that money that will
Exactly.
create long-term financial security for yourself, especially in that industry where your income is so variable.
Exactly. And I thought for most real estate agents, now that I've been doing this for 22 years, I'm like, most real estate agents, like getting this type of information, like this is amazing. Take us through 45, 20, 35, so
Yep.
people can start grasping what they should do.
You bet, you bet. So it's one aspect of a much, much, much bigger picture, but to your point is a very important aspect. And what it is I basically don't believe in budgets. I think they set us up to fail. Oftentimes we set very unrealistic restraints around our spending. Oh, I will only spend this much at the grocery store. I will only spend this much on gas. I will only spend this much on clothes, yada, 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 right? And yet we wait. Some people don't actually look at, did they stick to the budget? But oftentimes, if they do, they're waiting too long and they blew their budget, and it breeds this deflated sense like, I failed. right? It's just so disempowering. And that's not going to get you anywhere. My whole thing is we need to be empowered around money. We need to understand basic tools. The 45-20-35 is a tool. So I'll dive into that in a second. And we need to use those tools so we can think for ourselves, so that we can build confidence, so we can become masters in this crazy world called, personal finance. So the 45-20-35 is actually a model or framework for your spending. And I say proactively take whatever's hitting your bank account every month as your net income, right? And put it into three buckets. The first is your 45. So no more in a perfect world, no more, which we know we don't live in a perfect world. So I'll address that at the end. But no more than 45% of your net income should be used for what I call your unavoidables. And that's to put a roof over your head. So your housing costs, your utilities, your transportation costs, depending on where you live. That could be a car, it could be, public transportation, whatever the case may be. And then your insurance that's non-medical, because for a lot of people, obviously, if you're self-employed, it looks different. But a lot of people are the companies we work for take care of our medical, or we take care of it, but it comes out of our paycheck before it hits our bank account, right? Um, then the most important thing is at least 20% goes to invest into your future or into you.
Well, I think that part, right? This is what I thought. So, coming from a real estate agent background, I thought we understand the 45%, right, in general. But when it comes to the 20%, I think that's where most people, they don't understand what to do with it, right? Because I think they've spent most of it on the 45%, and then the rest of it, they're like, well, now we can go buy stuff, right?
Which you can't. You first need to invest and buy in yourself. And so, what does that mean? That means think first about your future. So there's some priorities you have to make sure you have taken care of. And once you do, you can start dreaming about how you want to spend the other 20%. And let me clarify that a little bit. You obviously have certain priorities, like make sure that you're contributing as much as you can to a retirement account, right? So that's really important because, as you learn later in the book, your money has an awful lot of power in it, but you got to let it grow. And the only way you can let it grow is to consistently save and don't touch it. So you've got to make sure you've got a really good plan around your retirement savings, and you're consistently doing that, often even beyond, and this is beyond if you are contributing to your 401k, or any retirement plans through your work. Remember, this is after tax income. So I'm still telling you, look and see, should you open up an IRA, another type of retirement account outside of your business or your company or the company you work for, so that you can continue to maximize that, right? The other thing you need to have is it's called an emergency fund. A lot of people talk about this, but it's enough money to cover at least 6 to 9 months of expenses. Now, for you or people that have very fluctuating income, depending on, what's happening in the market and the economy, I would say more than that, or at least access to cover your living expenses. It may not have to be sitting in cash in a savings account, but you got to solve for that so that, God forbid, we're in 2 years of a slump in real estate. You're not going, where do I get this money from? I've got to tap into a retirement account. That's a disaster. You don't want to do that. Major, major penalties. So you've got to at least have a plan and some access to cover those expenses. The next thing is, do you have any bad debt to pay down? A lot of credit card debt, high interest debt. Um, and those three things are really important. Then you begin to go, how diversified am I? Maybe if I've got those three things checked off, maybe I need to start expanding how I'm investing. Maybe there are taxable investment accounts I should be looking at, like just, again, outside of retirement accounts, open up a brokerage account and start buying into a mutual fund, cost dollar averaging, whatever the case may be. Maybe it's a real estate investment that you want to make and you want to start saving for. So there's a hierarchy of priorities, but Once you have assurance that you are on the right track, I also then invite people to think, what do you want to do to invest in you? Maybe there's a credential you want to go get that will help you earn more money. Maybe you want to go back to school. Maybe you want to go. I mean, for me, it was writing this book. It's not inexpensive to write a book. Everyone thinks, I mean, yes, you get an agent and somebody buys the book. Everyone thinks that, but no, if you really want to go out and market a book, you have a
It's expensive.
publicist, right?
Yeah.
You got to invest in that. Maybe there's book parties you're investing in to get the word out or whatever the case may be.
Mm,
That's
yeah.
an investment in my future, in my goals. So I look at it that way. Obviously you can't throw that at the top of your priority list if you've got high credit card and, high credit card balances. But I'm offering you all to start dreaming about what your goals are and what on those goals could help you make more money, build equity in whatever you're doing. And think about that when you think about the 20%. And the book dives much deeper into that. But you got to take care of business first. And then the last is what I call the empowerment money, right? That's everything left over, which in a perfect world, again, we don't live in a perfect world. So I'm going to teach you how to adjust things. That means it's 35% left over for you to use for discretionary expenses, going out to dinner, taking a vacation, clothes, whatever the case may be, but also things you need like food, right? We all need food, but does it mean that we need to be going and to the fancy grocery stores and buying organic all the time? Like, we need gas, but does it mean you need to take 5 road trips this month? Like it's it's trying to build what I like this frame. The reason I really love this framework and created it is because my goal is to create intention around your spending so that people begin to see that there's choices you make, but there's also consequences to the choice you make. So if you're going to do that and it goes over the 35%, what happens? How do you fund the deficit? That's how most of us get into credit card debt. We use our credit card to fund the surplus or the deficit, or we go to our savings. And all that's doing is taking money away from your net worth. Now, obviously, some people live in really, really expensive parts of this country, and 45% may not work. That's when I say you don't touch your 20. You make a conscious choice to say, I'm going to eat out less. I'm going to buy generic. I'm going to get more scrappier with my 35%. I might carpool. It depends on the circumstance. So I can help subsidize that 45 because, you know, I happen to live in New York City or wherever the case may be, right? So it's about a proactive approach and being intentional and feeling very empowered by the decisions you're making and understanding how they impact positively and negatively your long-term financial well-being.
Yeah. I loved that structure. It simplified it. And I also love the fact that you say you don't believe in a budget because, you know, that's reality.
Well, and do you really track every ounce of dollar you spend? And, I know we are beginning to live more and more in a cashless society, so we can see things versus it be cash that we lay out. But, to be honest with you, how many people, which I do invite everyone to have more of a money date with themselves so they do review things, but how many people, when they're in the middle of all this, take the time to actually look at where everything is going? And I think, frankly, the more cashless we become, the more we actually spend with all of our digital money, whether it's a credit card or whether it's, Apple Pay, whatever the case may be.
I think that's accurate. It feels it feels easier. There's less friction, right?
Well, and also we have again, it goes back to the emotional side of money. Um, Typically speaking, and even statistically speaking, there is people have a physical, like it's hard to part with $100 bill. There's a physical connection with money that makes it harder to actually spend it. And so when it's plastic, it almost feels like phantom money. And people tend to spend more, quite frankly. And there's actual studies behind this. So one of my suggestions, which you probably saw in the book, is as you're really working this new muscle, as you create a plan for yourself, which all happens, I kind of lay out the roadmap to how to build financial freedom. One big thing is, well, how do you execute it in your everyday life? What practices do you have so that when you have a plan, you actually do it? And one of them is pay cash for everything for a while, commit to that, because you'll start to really feel that money flying out the door. And it again builds intentionality and important awareness.
I love that. That's actually a really good hack. I highlighted that. I was like, that's smart. Very
Thank
very
you.
simple and
Simple.
actionable,
Yeah.
right? Talk to me about a money date because you mentioned it maybe like 2 minutes ago. What's a
Yeah,
money?
yeah. So a money date is basically whether you are single and you're responsible for all of your money, or whether you are in a partnership and it's a shared responsibility, because that's the key, right? Is I'm also not suggesting that you take over all the money once you become a master at this, because now you're creating dependency on someone else has on you, right? So it really should be a shared partnership. It's sitting down and on a consistent basis, the same exact time every week. It becomes part of your routine. Mine happens to be Saturday morning with a cup of coffee in hand. And I just kind of browse on my computer. Sometimes I have a pen and paper and I'm looking at all my accounts, and I'm taking a note of what I've spent. But more importantly, now because I've done this for so long, I'm also looking for inaccurate charges. I'm looking for things that surprise me. And I can't tell you how many things I have found and been constantly, and maybe they're for things I actually have that I didn't even know I had anymore, but it makes me pause and go, do I actually need that subscription? Like, is that an opportunity to cancel that?
The answer
I
is no, you
joke,
don't need
I
it.
joke, I mean, this is so true, but my son is still in college. I have three now, as I lay them, I talk about them a lot in the book, but now they're all in their late to mid 20s, and my youngest is actually a senior in college. And he knows when I'm having my money date because he's still sleeping. And I'm literally like, Uber?
Boom, boom, boom,
Uber?
boom, boom.
Uber Eats? Absolutely not. And he's like,
That is
oh,
funny.
Mom.
That's
Every,
hilarious.
I mean, it's going to be like literally at the rehearsal dinner of his wedding, and it's going to be a discussion that it comes out. Um, but he could roast me as much as I could roast him because I am constantly like, bing, 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 bing. So, anyways, it's just again, I lay out like a 12-step process, but it's as simple as committing to spending time with all your accounts, not your investment accounts. I think that's really important to highlight, but really looking at everything and making sure there are no surprises, making sure that there's not things that you need to do proactively to move things around and keep things moving in the right direction. I bring up the investment accounts because everyone needs to remember that those are really more of a longer term perspective. And if it's really easy for us to check them so often that they create so much anxiety, and we begin to go, wait, what does this do? No, like invest them, look at them. I kind of look at them honestly about once a quarter. And maybe sometimes a little bit more often if we've got a lot of volatility. But I also, again, you've got to work this muscle a while and really condition yourself to not just react, but to see that this is a longer term perspective. And I need to be patient. That word, patient, again.
I kept on thinking about Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett as I was reading your breakdowns, and I loved the little graphics that you had of the different, women scenarios, like, you named
Yeah,
them, right? Is that what it was?
it was. Yeah. Thank you.
Those
I
were
appreciate it.
so great. I'm like, "Oh, this simplifies it." Age, debt, what their goals are. I'm like, "This is easy." So,
So,
it real Go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I love that because that was a bit of I hope this lands. I hope this works, right? My I'm glad to hear that it was received well. So for your listeners' benefit, I lay out this 7-step process, right? And but at the end of the day, I want readers to see themselves in how does this actually work, right? So I put together 3 personas. It was I think there's a divorcee, actually 4. There's a divorcee. I can't remember now because I've used, I may have cut it down in 3, but I've used as many of 6 in my teaching. But I use a divorcee. I use a young woman who is single, who's new in her career, who really doesn't have, her biggest asset right now is her income, right? And then I talk about a married couple that goes through a major medical crisis. And I lay out, here's their situation today. Here are 6 little steps. Here's their problems, right? Here are the observations of their current reality. Here are their hopes and dreams and goals, right? And then here are 6 little steps, no more, no less, that if they did this, I'm able to show the reader the profound impact it can have on their overall financial well-being at a certain point in time. And it's pretty mind-blowing, isn't it?
It
That
is. That
this
was one of my favorite parts, by the way.
thank you. It's to your point, it's not that hard, right? But I don't think we see the power we have in the decisions we make.
It feels hard, Steph. You know what? It's not when you break it down, but let me tell you, like emotionally, the anxiety sometimes it's like it's real. Like that's why I really liked, oh, the simple breakdown. Now it's a matter of, like you said earlier, it's like working that muscle to stay on track, right? And it's not easy.
No, it's not. And it's to expand on your point. So but prior to this book and the way I actually built this book was I knew I wanted it to be part memoir for reasons we already talked about, right? I wanted the reader to see themselves in me and to realize, oh my gosh, she gets me, you know, she gets me. And to build that relatability that I'm not some expert talking down at anyone, I'm talking with you. I want to be, at the end of the day, a friend that is walking beside you, talking about what's going on, but helping you through it. And not it be this expert talking at. I don't think that works. I certainly didn't want to hear that when I was at my lowest point trying to figure this out. I really wanted a friend, I wanted somebody empathetic. And so that's part of the intent with that first part is to see, I'm certainly not perfect, but if I can do this, you can too. And then I didn't see anything out there in terms of resources that I felt got me, to be honest. So I decided to create my own. And I really, again, because of my financial background, had taken these steps that I took and turned them into curriculum that I had prior to this book presented to women all throughout the country in various stages of my career. And then though marrying that curriculum and the story, I felt like, wow, this could, I hope, be an impactful book. So your words mean a lot to me. But I tell you that because my experience has been working really in a room with these women, right? And going in different sessions to these building blocks. I once had a woman that exactly where you talked about you liked the best, where we were going through these scenarios, she stood up and said, ladies, this isn't that hard. Like, we got this. That was such a rewarding comment because you're right. It is overwhelming. You're right. Like, and frankly, I think the financial industry confuses us more with all the jargon that's thrown out there. But if we go and we look at how little tiny decisions we make can impact the power that we actually have outside of our investments, outside of, if we hire someone to help us, but the power that we have in the daily decisions and how they can impact our overall financial well-being, I think it creates some aha moments. So I'm glad you had that. And my hope is that it keeps people more energized to keep going.
Yeah, it does, which leads me to, and I know I skipped all over the book, okay,
That's okay. Yeah, no, it's love it.
but um, money mindsets. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, the money mindsets goes back to just as when we started talking about my lowest point and mindset, right? That scarcity versus abundant, or growth. You have a money mindset that very much is aligned with your mindset in general, right? How you're navigating life. Do you operate out of fear, scarcity? Do you hold too much in cash? Are you afraid to take risks? I'm thinking strictly quantitatively with money, right? Are you holding on to every last dollar, afraid to let it go and to see what it could do for you? I'd like to say, are you playing it small? Are you living on the sidelines, or are you dreaming big and getting in the game, right? You have the abundant mindset when it comes to money. This is really, I think, important to distinguish is that mindset is more of, wait, money can be constantly created. There's plenty for everyone, right? It's not scarce, it's abundant. But here's the warning. I think too often we rely on our income and our paycheck, and we look at the abundant mindset as I can always go and make more.
Oh yeah, that's the common thought.
And the problem with that is it's going to go back to what you and I talked about with your business and real estate. But what is possible if you actually don't just think about I can always make more? What would happen if you saw your money as a source to create income for you too, or grow or create returns for you that you constantly invest, and you saw it as my money can also grow and make more for the overall my overall financial foundation. I think in this country we focus too much on income and not enough on net worth. And if
Mm,
we have an abundant mindset around, yes, I believe I can go out and I can create and I can earn and there is no limit, I've got to also partner that with the skills and the tools and the confidence and the commitment to be good stewards of that money, to put it to work, to even grow more and to create really stability for ourselves. And that to me is still a problem in this country. There's a lot of exciting talk right now. And now this is going to go specifically to women, but we are hearing a lot about the Taylor Swift effect and,
mm,
and all this
mm.
women's economic empowerment. But a lot of that has to do with starting businesses and climbing the corporate ladder and earning more, but we're still not doing a good job managing it when it hits our bank account. And I think the real
Yeah,
comprehensive abundance mindset is when you look at all of that collectively and you think about having a growth mindset around all of that, not just one side of it. I hope that makes sense.
that does. I was just taking some notes because you bring up a good point. Where do we start with trying to do a better job understanding money? Because if we don't make an effort ourselves, right? I feel like, yeah, people will listen to the podcast, but then a week later, it's like, oh, let's go back to normal because that's what we're used to, right?
So number one, it starts with a commitment. And if said, I kind of gave you a real hypothetical, or not a hypothetical, a real, like at my lowest point, this is what I did. So it was more in the weeds, of the details. But overall, what did I do? I made an unwavering commitment that I would never, ever be dependent on someone again like that financially.
I
I
like
wouldn't
that.
put myself at risk again. And that commitment became a guiding light, right? It
Yep, yep.
became that North Star. So what does that mean? Make like what's a tangible way to, okay, so what does that commitment mean? What are you committing to? I am committing to be financially independent. It is the realization too that financial independence does not mean you have a certain dollar amount in your bank account and you never have to work again. I think we often assign in this country, we think about that as financial independent, right? Financial freedom as, well, I don't have to work. I've got enough money. I'll never run out of money. No, that's too overwhelming for too many of us, right? Like that feels like a Herculean task we'll never get to. will never achieve. But it's a commitment you make to be solely responsible for your life, for your financial life, to go out and be resourceful. If something hits you that you don't know, you're committing to go deeper and embrace financial literacy. Start Googling away, getting answers. So it really is about, like, I commit to being dependent on me, that no one, not a friend, not a boss, not an advisor, not a parent, not as a partner, is going to defend and build my wealth better than me.
That's so true. I love that commitment.
And if you have that and you truly are committed, you will become resourceful. You will figure things out. You will build confidence in yourself. You might fail at times. You might reach challenges that take you down a little bit, but get back up and look at them as a learning experience. And, I think that is critical. I also think if you've had a problem staying the course, if you've been sitting here for a long time going, I want to do this, I want to do this, but you never really, it's kind of like, January and the whole dieting thing. It's like, okay, it works for a month and then we all go back to the way we were. Um, I would offer this. I had to do this, because I was at such a transformative low, low point. Create a vision for yourself, create a goal, get a vision board, whatever works for you. But start to look at, what do I want my life to look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And it, depending on the type of person you are, I'm a very visual person. So I literally got a vision board and started to lay it out. But some people aren't. They have another tool that works for them so that they can stay on course. But those goals for yourself, that vision that you have, and the book lays this out. I talk a lot about, what do you want to be, right? What's that vision for your future? Not only is the commitment you make a guiding light, but the vision and the goals you have are a guiding light. And that will help you stay on course. I also would highly recommend you throw out to somebody, talk about the vision. Maybe even do this together in partnership in a community with other friends, like-minded people that you're, or just a community, build a community so that you can help keep each other accountable.
Steph, I thought, so as I was reading this, I thought a couple of things. I thought, one, my money manifesto, what is it? Right? That's what I thought. I was like, oh, I got this, I got this. This is just from your ideas. And then I thought, this would be great to have like a Facebook group uh, where you have the group, it's called Fly, and then
Oh, love it.
you, because I run the largest Facebook community for real estate agents in the world. So
Oh, I love
we're
it.
about to
Well,
put
let's
the,
connect after so I can learn from, and I
well,
love
trust me, I got a
your
lot more to learn from you. I'm like, shit, I suck at this, I suck at this, I suck at this.
No, no, no. We're all a work in progress. Trust me. Trust me. And to be honest, we all need to learn from each other because, where you're excelling, I am not. Collectively, we're kicking butt, right? But we all have to lean on each other. But I like this idea, and I've seen it really work. Is it's not enough to go and dream and to go and write your goals down. Yes, that's hugely important, or to create a vision board. You got to make it sticky. And sometimes when you don't throw it out to someone, it's really hard to hold yourself accountable because it's really easy to go, well, but I did this instead, or but I didn't have enough time. But when you throw it out and you actually commit to someone or share it with someone, and then turn around and say, why don't we hold each other accountable? Let's do this together. And, I think you're setting yourself up for more success. So I think that's an idea I would consider. Again, if this is something that has been hard for you to stay the course.
I like that one a lot. All right, last question, because I see it's gotten harder to own property just over the last few years. The unaffordability is crazy. Do you think, well, what do you think about buying a house? Should you
Yeah.
rent? Should you own? You have a section for it,
You.
and you say, depends. But I want to know, like, what do you think? What do you tell your kid, your three sons? What do you tell them?
Yes. Well, I say it depends. You got to do the math. At the end of the day, you have to do the math because too often there is a narrative that buying a home is the American dream. That's the goal for everybody. And yeah, historically, it's been an unbelievable way to build equity and consequently to build wealth. But remember, when you own a home, just like any asset, assets serve a purpose. So if you have a house and you're living in it, what's the purpose? It's putting a roof over your head. You can't do anything with the money that is growing and building in that until you sell it, right? But so that's one thing to consider. But the truth is you have to really evaluate it. In today's high interest rate environment, owning a home is likely not the right choice right now, right? Also, to your point, the cost of living, excuse me, the cost of the real estate has gone up so much that, it's about shifting our thinking though, and not following a set of rules that we've been told, which, as I just said, and and I know you're in real estate, so you know this well, is we've been taught a rule that buying a house is the American dream and it's the best way to do, to create wealth. Well, it has been, but it doesn't mean it will continue. So you have to do the math. And I do break out, I think it's in chapter uh, 5. As I'm remembering this, I think it's in, no, 6. It's in chapter 6 where I break out. This is one of the most common questions I'm ever asked. And it kind of fell under this section called arbitrage, because arbitrage is really about, looking at inefficiencies and, what makes the most financial sense. And so I break it out so you can see some of the variables that you need to consider. Um, but it's not a black and white answer. I wish I could say today, rent, tomorrow, buy.
No, I mean, you actually have the exact right
Got to
answer.
think about, like, how long do you plan to live in the house,
Yeah,
right? What are the HOAs that are associated with the house? What's the interest rate what is the opportunity cost of holding up all the cash for the down payment into that property that you could have put and invested elsewhere? Again, it's a I try to lay out a formula, but more importantly, I think a set of tools that you can use and apply to your own situation.
I agree. I love that. Thank you. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate
Oh
it.
my gosh. Yeah.
Everyone, please pick up the book. It's called Fly, and it's Steph Wagner. Here's the title, the full title, had to find it. A Woman's Guide to Financial Freedom and Building a Life You Love. Don't let the subtitle fool you. This is for everyone. But the as I was reading this too, I thought, well, 63% of our real estate industry are female.
Right?
And this is so important not only for them, but I mean, you do a very good job outlining it for women, of course, right? But like everyone can use this. I started taking notes, and I'm like, damn, I suck at this. Like I was telling you, I'm like terrible at this. I'm like, I'm so. That's why I was like, oh, thanks for breaking it down because now I know where to start. So
Well,
thank you.
promise me one thing, okay?
Tell me.
Promise me, because this is a big goal of the book. You don't suck at anything.
Ah,
You
yeah,
just
I
may
know.
have not learned it before.
Yeah,
It just may be new to you. And so look at it differently. And and my hope is that this book really empowers people to think of it all differently. So, well, you
yeah.
have been just a pleasure, and thank you so much. I really am. It warms my heart to know how much you enjoyed the book.
Thanks. Thanks for writing it. Great job, and continue to do amazing stuff.
Thank you.